and welcome. My name is Ashley Sims. I'm the managing director of Build in Tulsa. Our organization is really dedicated to catalyzing multi-generational Black wealth creation through tech and entrepreneurship in the historic home of Black Wall Street. I am truly thrilled to be doing this panel today with these two very impressive women. As you may know, Black women are the fastest growing segment of entrepreneurs in the country. We outpace every other demographic, but we receive 0.5%. Let me say that one more time. 0.5% of venture capital. So that's why we're here with these two impressive women to try to decode, peel back the veil, and really talk through how you can secure the funding you need to scale. Let me introduce our wonderful panelists. There is Ms. Tina Williams-Caroma. She is a cybersecurity expert who has founded SciDeploy, which provides businesses and government agencies with cutting-edge technology solutions and functional testing that reduces the likelihood of costly breaches and operational inefficiencies. She's also the president and CEO of T-Secure, a cybersecurity services and solutions company. Both are based in Baltimore. Ms. Tina. And Lenore is an investor, executive coach, and venture strategist. Lenore is the founder and managing partner of Bright Ventures, a Black woman-led emerging fund and strategic advisory firm using a proprietary inclusive innovation model to deliver capital and coaching and community to a diverse group of founders and innovators. Her mission and her firm's is to build an inclusive economy. Thank you so much for being here, Lenore.
Thank you.
So, Lenore, I'm going to start with you. Let's level set a little bit. I want to talk about venture capital. What is venture capital, and when should founders consider VC?
Such an important question, because the answer is most of the time venture is not the right source of funding for a new business. But let's talk about when it can be. So venture capital was designed to invest in companies that had a high potential scalability because of software and technology. It rose into sort of the way that we invest when computer chips started to come into the world of investing as well. And so that origin is usually helpful to bear in mind if you're thinking about, like, is venture right for my company? It is a type of capital that results in someone else owning usually a material amount of your company. And that is worth doing because that capital should allow your company to build sort of a scale engine. Like, you should be able to see a way to $1 billion inside your company if you want to take
that was $1 billion with a B.
With a B. And so there are tons of companies like that. And if you are running a software or technology company and that's the right fit, amazing. And we will, I think, spend more time talking about how to do it. But in many cases, there are other kinds of capital that are more flexible, allow you more agency, more control, that might be more appropriate. And so hopefully we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
So we're going to give you both perspectives because Ms. Lenore is an investor, but Tina is a founder and she has raised capital. So with SciDeploy, you are a serial entrepreneur. She's been an entrepreneur since she was 7 years old, a military brat. She told me her first business was actually a golf ball stand / lemonade stand where she and her industrious friends would go into the creek behind the golf course and retrieve all those golf balls, wash them up, and sell them back to the golfers who are too lazy to go find their balls. That's what I call ingenuity, friends. So Ms. Lenore, Tina, serial entrepreneur. You bootstrapped all of those businesses, but you've decided to go for VC for your latest venture. Talk about that decision. Why did you feel that was important and why was it necessary?
Yeah, just as Lenore indicated, when you're really looking at venture funding and external funding, you typically have a thing to build before you can earn revenue. Different from a services company where you already have your credentials, you have the knowledge, you are the product, right? And whoever you bring on your team is the product, and what you can deliver are those services. So you don't necessarily have to get external funding, right? I do recommend having enough savings in the bank to cover probably about 2 or 3 months worth of payroll because customers tend to pay slow, and the bigger they are, the slower they seem to pay. Can't find the checkbook somehow. So I would say, even if it's a services company and your own money, have, some money in the bank because employees expect to get paid even if the customer hasn't paid you. And the fastest way to lose good talent is not being able to make payroll. So, so for the services side, that's why that was largely bootstrapped, right? Like, so my services company, 100% owner, there, and so I tried starting my product company. When I had the product idea, I started building it inside the services company. And for some companies, that works really well if they have, like a huge cash, and we were very, cash positive for the services business, but we also do government contracting, et cetera, and you have to account for any expenditures. It has to be reflected in your rate somehow, wrap rate, right? Like, so all of a sudden this, R&D overhead kind of cost was getting reflected in our bill rates, which made us less competitive, from a services perspective. And I was like, ooh, we need to move this out somewhere, and so just started, working with some of our different finance advisors and stuff. And the decision I made was to move it out and make a separate company out of it. I also knew I wanted it to have a different trajectory. The services company has been in full-time operation for the past 9.5 years. I am building Cytoploy to exit, right? Like, so I am not looking to have that same, long tenure with it. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to move this out. The investor-friendly route is a Delaware C Corp. So I carved it out, made it a Delaware C Corp instead of a Maryland LLC, the way that my services company is. And then, went after that external funding. So that was kind of the mindset and the why. And I can elaborate more on later with other questions. But.
So let's take it back a little bit. You mentioned something important. You said you built this to exit. Right. Can you talk a little bit about that, Lenore? Is that something you're looking for when you're looking to invest in companies? Is a company built to exit? And what does that mean, just for everybody?
Yeah, great question. So to clarify, I said be careful, venture is not always the right thing, and I am a venture investor. So just to qualify what I'm about to say next. Yeah, as a venture investor, my job is to invest on behalf of institutions and people and drive a significant return on their capital. And I can only do that if I invest in companies that double, triple, 10x, or 100x in size, right? So again, that's where scale comes in. It's not a services business. I also run a services business, so I get it. I've never taken any capital on that one, where every year maybe we will double, but it's not going to go from 0 to 1,000 in a year, right? So absolutely, as a venture investor, I need to believe that you can take what I invest in at the pre-seed and what you can return for a fraction of ownership in your company can return my fund. So tens of millions of dollars, right? So that, yes, billion-dollar exits. The exits, when we say exit, what we're talking about is either you can build a company that a large organization wants to buy, and buy for enough to return capital to your investors, or you can build a company that so many people are interested in the growth of that it can become a publicly traded company through an IPO. That's what we mean by exit. Yeah.
So other than venture capital, there are other forms of funding. There's crowdfunding, there are angel investors, there's bootstrapping, as we talked about with your tech service solutions company. There's going through accelerator programs that can provide either grants or equity-based funding. You went through an accelerator. Can you talk a little bit about that process, Tina, and what that meant for your ability to funding your scale?
Yeah, so a little bit of context for Cytoploy, we've raised 1.1 million in pre-seed. So about
I'm going to need you guys to clap that up. Because the fact of the matter is, there's only so many Black women in this country that have raised more than $1 million. So for her to stand here and say she's 1.1 pre-seed, that puts you in a very small elite group of women, Black women in this country. So I'm sorry, continue.
Thanks. So of that total, about 750,000 or so was dilutive or VC, a mix of VC and angel. So when I say dilutive, that means there's a percentage of my company that was exchanged for that capital. and then the balance of that 1.1 and the 750 was non-dilutive. And so the non-dilutive came from different grant programs. Accelerator, most of them attached to being a sort of accelerator or some sort of, knowledge and coaching in addition to like the actual funding. So one was AWS has had an impact accelerator for Black founders. So that was non-dilutive capital with that program. The Google for Black founders, the Black Fund, that's also some of the non-dilutive capital. T. Rowe Price Foundation that was based in Maryland. They also had capital that was a part of a grant, and then different pitch competitions, right? There was also non-dilutive capital associated with those. So I would say look for as many non-dilutive options as possible, right? That's really helpful. I think, Hello Alice is one source of that. They have different companies that advertise their grant funding through that platform, a lot of them non-dilutive. F6S.com, they also have different opportunities that they advertise. Techstars is, I'd say that's like, it's an accelerator plus quasi-VC because it is non-dilutive funding as a part of that. So we went through the Techstars accelerator. The good thing about these accelerators, in addition to the funding, is just the network that you can build. The more people that know about what you're building, you can expand into their network, can make warm introductions, et cetera. Like that's really the value of having both capital as well as some of the like coaching and the network that you get to build, both with the companies that are managing the accelerator experience as well as the other co-founders within the accelerator.
It's that social capital part,
Yes,
right? That you
yes.
get to meet mentors, you get to meet other founders that are with you in this struggle
Right.
to build your company. We always talk about being prepared. So, Ms. Lenore, how would you advise folks in this room that are looking for funding to be prepared for that investment meeting? What do you want them to come to the table with?
Yeah, so it depends what stage you're at, but if you're at an early stage and you're pursuing some of the programs that you're mentioning, like we're a fit for SciDeploy, use that non-dilutive capital to help you get a sense of product market fit. So what I mean by that is, what are you selling to whom for how much? The more evidence you have of that, the better terms you can get at your pre-seed, which is another way to reduce dilution, right? Because if I have to buy 10% of your company for $100,000 versus $100,000 for 5% of your company, you probably want that 5, right? So if your goal is to take less dilution, be further along to get better terms. Part of that is about proving product market fit. It's also about having a team. You're not going to have an all-star team at pre-seed. It's just not, the team won't be there yet. But know who you're looking for, have the right advisors around you, have the right references and reference accounts. And then besides that, I have found that most early stage VCs like myself, we want to be able to talk about, okay, so what's your next 18 months look like? How are you going to use the capital in an efficient way? But we also want to be able to zoom out and tell me, like, paint me a picture 5 years from now or 10 years from now. What does that exit look like? And so being able to really thoughtfully address both the immediate term and the long-term goals for the company would be another thing to prep.
One of my favorite questions is, what do you know now that you wish you knew before the raise? Tina, what can you share with our group today that can just give them a little insight into some pitfalls maybe to avoid?
Yeah, I think that, really when it comes to the team, and I think determining like what you can reasonably do and like what you might need to have somebody else to come in and do, it's really hard to have your eye on like two discrete like balls at the same time. So just, I was the CEO. I'm technical. I've been technical throughout my career. I started my career as a software developer. Haven't done that specifically, in years. But, when I was first starting, I was both trying to have my eye on the technical product features ball, as well as the corporate vision, answering the question that pre-seeds want to know about, like, how are you going to use the capital? What's the runway? This pro forma thing that they wanted. I was like, what are you asking me? So it was just really challenging. And I think that slowed us down like a little bit ultimately, right? Because I was kind of, I wasn't paying as much attention. Another source of funding is just like in-kind funding, right? Like, so there's a program in Maryland MIPS, where they would pay a university on our behalf to develop some of the solutions. So I used that to develop our prototype. But while they were developing the prototype, I gave them the roadmap, et cetera. This is what I want. But I wasn't into the details enough. Because I was like, okay, now I got to get ready for like this next bit of money that I'm going to need to build my team. And so since I wasn't paying enough attention to like the technical stuff, like too much time passed. And I was like, what is it? What? Wait a second. like we need to, so I think I lost, probably a good 6 to 9 months, I feel like, in terms of like where we could be, because my attention was split so much. So I did, bring in a technical co-founder. I looked throughout my network, and you don't want to rush that process either. So I don't want to, encourage you just to like check the box, because you got to, make sure that you're bringing in the right person. But I think that that's one of the things I would have paid attention to a little bit sooner, just because it's just really hard to lean into both sides. Yeah.
It's a really
with
great
enough
point,
detail.
because Black women founders also tend to be solo founders. And you tend to go further faster with a team. Lenore, any pitfalls that you can think of that you want to advise folks to try to avoid?
I think you just made some really good points. I want to underline, it is better to wait to fundraise and have a more efficient process because you're more prepared than to do the 2 jobs of fundraising and running a business. I've done it. I've done it that way as well, and it is 2 full jobs. So I would advise you to go slowly, make sure the right people are around you, make sure that your pitch is in place. I have always been really open. Founders will come and say, I'm not fundraising, but I'd love to run my thinking by you. And in that very low stakes environment for both people, you can get a ton of feedback. I would encourage you to get that feedback, make sure that you're happy with how things are gonna be, and that your business is not gonna be compromised by you stepping out to fundraise. I think that's a really good point.
I love that. My background is actually in nonprofit fundraising, and we always would say, if you ask for money, you're going to get advice. If you ask for advice, you're going to get money. All right. I do want to talk a little bit about the founder-investor relationship, because it truly is a relationship. If you are talking about taking on investment, you could be in a relationship with that investor for 5 to 7 years, maybe as you're working towards that exit. That's like a marriage. They're not marriages that last 7 years. So what do you need to look for as a founder, as an investor, in the people that you're having this relationship with? And what can you do to build a relationship better from the beginning? Let's start with Lenore, and Tina, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, there are a ton of founders I'm a fit for, and there are a ton that I'm not, and that's not a judgment of me or the founder, right? So you have to find the people that are really a fit for you, and I would look at skills. So does the investor know things about what you need to do? Do they know things that you don't know about what you need to do? Hopefully, yes. I would also look for networks. One thing to watch out for, especially if you're raising pre-seed, is this fund a fund that follows on? If they do not follow on, have that knowledge with you as you're preparing for what's next. We have a strategy where we will write a check at pre-seed and work very closely to write a second check at seed. Not all funds do that, something to think about. And then one thing I'll say about what I look at with founders is there are founders I'm always happy to chat with, but I do notice what happens when I do give advice. So if I've seen the same mistake 100 times and I see a founder making it and I give that advice, if 6 weeks later they come back and say, hey, I didn't hear it at first, but I hear it now and I'm trying it out and it seems to be working. That goes really differently for me than if the person just never addresses it. So you don't have to take my advice, but know why, like, why did you code it the way you did? What did you hear when, right? So if you're totally closed to feedback, that's a deal breaker for me as an investor. Not for all investors, but for me, I want that to be able to be a conversation, especially so early in the company's life.
So good fit, bringing something to the table, skills, coachability. That one's my favorite. What about you?
Yeah, I would definitely say not just you, Lenore. I think most investors that I've heard is coachability, right? Like, no, if they're gonna be investing in you and your money, they don't want somebody that thinks they know it all, et cetera, because that's also gonna reflect in how you take customer meetings and how you're able to find, a product market fit, how you're able to innovate and continue to like integrate the feedback that you get, right? Like, so I think coachability, I'll just say that's something that I've heard, across the board. I think for pre-seed, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the focus was on I just need the cash, right? Like I mean part of it was like, are we a good fit, et cetera, as long as you weren't just like sleazy and whatnot, I'm gonna say my standards was a little low. It's like, oh, you can write the check, all right, okay. So not gonna lie there, that was the focus for pre-seed. I am, as I'm prepping for like seed, I'm very much so looking at the network, right? Like not just the cash, but like how can you reduce my sales spend, right? Are you gonna give me a lot of warm introductions? Like, what kind of customers are you connected into? Are they the type that I'm pursuing? So I'm a lot more discriminative now as I'm like, preparing for the seed raise than I was for pre-seed. But I do also think though, I actually had an angel investor that we signed a contract and everything about like the money that he was going to give. He was going to give it in 2 tranches. And so half was going to be, like in April, I forget what year, this 2022, and the other was going to be in July. Contract, lawyer, everything. Come July, hey, so where's the second part of the funding? Oh, I'm sorry, I've decided to invest out. I'm sorry, I thought we had a contract, but I just left it alone, right? But note to self, like not trusting you, like, and I just say that as well, like it is not, you have not raised that money until it is in the bank. That was a part of like what I learned there. Like, so don't start making plans, like hard plans for money until you see that wire close. So, so yeah, I think, pay attention, I guess, to how people act like the first time around. I like the quote, when people tell you who they are, believe them the first time. So, I have noted that in conversations with different investors, how they respond. Some of them, it's just, I guess like a bit, even if you're not necessarily going to fund me, are you attempting to try to like find other ways to provide value, right? That was something I also paid attention to. So maybe I don't fit your investment thesis for whatever reason, but the ones that I also noted and said, okay, well, when I'm further along, or if it's a time thing with fitting their investment thesis a bit better, I still kept them on the list. I still keep them updated, because if time and certain milestones are the only thing that makes them not invest, I'm paying attention. Did they still also try to help in the interim for me? Yeah.
I think it's a great point, and I'm so sorry about the angel. That's not cool at all, but I totally get why you left it, because the lawyer fees. Yeah, and that mostly I get to know founders pretty well before I invest. Like, we'll have a number of conversations, but we did one deal where I had never met the founder in person. It was quick, it was moving quickly, there was a limited amount of allocation, I really wanted access, and I offered that she could speak to other founders in my portfolio. So just like, if you can't see it yourself, fact check in other ways, right? And I don't want to speak for all, but I wouldn't be offended if someone wanted to talk to reference portfolio companies, and we check your references. Mm-hmm. So it's not a bad idea to ask around.
Check references. I also heard update. Keep folks updated, even if they're not ready to invest yet. Sometimes no is just not yet. Speaking of no's, and we're going to come to you guys in a minute if you have questions, but speaking of no's, we know fundraising is hard. We know being a founder is hard. When you get 99 no's, what keeps you going back for that 100th meeting?
You know, I think like internal confidence is something that I say you have to have. I mean, whether you're an entrepreneur or, you know, you're working for a company. You know, I remember early in my career walking in a room one time and this, you know, guy, brother of another color, is sitting in the room, you know, and he's like, "Why are you here?" And I was like, I sat down, nice, comfortable, and confident. I was like, because such and such invited me, and just stayed right there. And whatever look he had on his face was for him. And, you know, but it was just like, I'm not questioning why I'm in here. If you have the question, find somebody else to get the answer, you know, like that. But I think that you have to kind of have that confidence in yourself about like, this is who I am. And you are not your business, right? Like, don't be so like personally, like, this is my identity tied in here. It's, you have to own it enough to be passionate and resilient and the like about it, but you do not equal the business, right? Like you know, fail fast, okay? I might need to pivot. I might need to like tweak it, okay, based upon what I'm hearing. I think I need to kind of shift this way a little bit. Like you really just have to have that internal confidence, I think, just to keep going, right? Now it's just like, no, okay, thanks. Can you give me feedback as to why you said no? That would be really helpful, you know, so like, I'm not just gonna take the no, I'm gonna get some value out of the no, right? Like, so, you know, ask the question, right? To understand why, you know, and if it's something valuable, then keep it. If not, then just throw it away, and you know that, you know, you probably didn't want to be tied with that person anyway. So I think that's, you know, my vantage point.
I love that. Any questions?
My question is about the founder-investor relationship. So first, I just love that this is not like so many other panels where it's kind of all or nothing. Like you're only hearing from founders or only investors. So I appreciate both sides of the coin being up here. As someone who is getting ready to start wading into those waters of that journey with the offering my team and I are putting together to put debt savviness in the hands of younger children, you know, just the way that these things can go, as you touched on, Ashley, I'm curious, what happens when you start out, you know, it's a strong fit, everyone feels really good about it, you sign the contract, but then to use your analogy, you fall out of love, right? Like something takes a turn and you're bound together technically through that agreement, but it's not like an advisory member who can just be like, all right, y'all got it from here, deuces, or even a board of director member who's like, I'm just gonna see myself out, we vote, it's a done deal. You know, if things get tricky, once you've already committed kind of to each other over an extended period, how do you change course if need be?
I can address that. The good thing is that founder and institutional investor, like a fund investor or a corporate investor, there is a contractual relationship and something called an investor's rights agreement that outlines exactly what you owe the investor in exchange for their capital. So you have guidelines. If you fall out with an investor, which I have seen happen, and it's because the investor acted in an unprofessional way, usually your relationships with your other investors are strong enough that they're going to say, like, this is a harm to the company. We actually are going to work with you to make sure this person does not continue to gain more power and control in the situation, and hopefully they're not on your board. Be really careful about board members. Be really careful about that. If you can, actually, I hope this is okay to say, don't get a board till you have to, because that's much harder to unwind. So, so that's one thing. But most of the time, I would say 85% of the time, when you and an investor fall out, you just stop talking and you just fulfill your legal obligations.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, even with like the angel that you know, he still technically has, you know, what he has in the gut, but we don't talk. I don't like what is there to talk about? You know, like he doesn't get updates or anything. So you gotta, the contract is the contract, but that's what we got. That's it. So yeah, I haven't fallen out, I guess, with any other, I guess, sort of investor per se. I think that, you know, updates though are really, I think that's just what helps like maintain, like communication is like the lifeblood of, almost any kind of relationship, right? Like, so when I was going through Techstars, they were like, send them weekly. I was so glad when the program was over and I could stop. I was like, woo, okay. But, I was already in a cadence of like at least quarterly, right? Like, this is where we are. This is the runway. Here's the challenges. Here's my ask. Here's how you can be helpful. Here's what my concerns are, et cetera, right? And different ones will, most of the institutional ones ask for, quarterly. That is a thing where I'm like, hey, y'all stop asking me I'm going to send the update, right? But, I get it. Like, I have their money. They want to know what is happening. So, I get that as well. One other, I lost the thought. Oh, well, I'm sorry. If I think of it, I'll try to find you afterwards. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Another question?
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Noelle Mubaira. I am data analyst at Bank of America, as well as CEO of a property management company and a publishing and coaching company. My question, I was trying to think back to MBA days. What's the difference between pre-seed and seed? What would those definitions be? And to our moderator, non-profit fundraising, interested in that. Okay. Just maybe some sources.
The difference between pre-seed and seed is up for debate.
It definitely is. Absolutely.
And the things that people are usually talking about when they compare them are, is there a product or not a product? Is there revenue or no revenue? Is there a team, not a team? If you're pre-product, pre-revenue, pre-team, then you're definitely pre-seed. If you've got two of those, maybe you're seed. We think about seed when I can see that someone's willing to pay for the thing that you have to offer. And we think about Series A when you've got millions of dollars in recurring revenue because lots of people want to pay for what you have to offer. So those are the basic thresholds, and no one really knows. What I would encourage you to do if you're not sure what to call your round is focus more on the terms as related to the traction. So like what's the deal you're making is usually a more important question than what's the label of that round. Does that make sense? Okay.
Oh, I remembered what I was going to say. Yeah, I have zero. I am the only person on my board now through like pre-seed raise, right? Like, so to Lenore's point, like push off that, board. I have advisors, but in terms of like formal board members with voting powers, I do not have any of those through the pre-seed raise. Yeah.
And you should use that time to figure out like who adds value, who do you trust, right? And that's how you can select board members when it's time.
In terms of nonprofit fundraising, I will just say there are a lot of similarities between for-profit fundraising and nonprofit fundraising. I think something that I would love our entrepreneurs and startups and business owners to look at is this non-dilutive grant funding that usually comes from nonprofits, because then you're not giving up a stake in your company. And so there is going to be a big foundation in your town. There are foundations that are dedicated to entrepreneurship. There are foundations that are dedicated to empowering Black women. Goldman Sachs has a program, the 1 Million Black Women Initiative. And so there are definitely these resources out there. I can talk to you afterwards as well. I think we might have time for one more question if we're quick.
Hello, Sharonda Davis with Fidelity Investments. My question is how to protect your ideas and concepts, like through patents, NDAs, when you're presenting to individuals who may not actually invest but think your idea is great. What protects you from them taking your idea and making it their own?
Yeah, one of my advisors and, several people, it's almost like standard in taking a meeting with like a VC, like, NDAs aren't really standard, right? Like it's the amount of like effort that it can take to like take something from an idea to a thing is a lot, right? Like, so a lot of people have a lot of ideas, et cetera. It would be of greater value to you to go ahead and start getting feedback on that idea, like getting, like taking your notes and stuff, because even that in and of itself starts becoming like a differentiator for you. Certainly pursue the patent. Mine is patent pending, right? But it's still, I wouldn't not get the feedback and ask the questions. I mean, you don't have to give like every single detail about, you know, you don't have to give like the secret sauce per se, but you need to convey enough to be able to, if it's an investor, like to know that there's some there. And if you're doing market research, you know, you got to craft your questions such that the answers that you actually get are valuable to you. And when you go into like when you're doing pre-seed and your pre-product and stuff, you've got to have enough like interest, traction in some capacity, even if that isn't revenue yet. Maybe it's, you know, signups, maybe it's a wait list, maybe it's, you know, whatever it is, there's got to be something to indicate. And that means you need to communicate enough of your idea to be able to,
I'm so glad you said that, because we don't sign NDAs, and you could look on the website of the fund and see if they're invested in a competitor. That's like a simple thing to do to make sure that you're not just basically telling someone on the board of another company how you're making your thing work. But beyond that, I encourage you to share.
Well, we're almost out of time. The one thing I would like to leave you with is that I am from the home of historic Black Wall Street. Let me tell you, you come from innovators, inventors, and funders. We have always funded our businesses. Since the 20s, we have funded our businesses. So I advocate for you, get into crowdfunding, learn about it, learn how you can invest in a business, learn how you can invest in a startup. I think it's important for us to fund each other. So thank you so much for your time. Tina, Lenore, thank you for your excellent advice, insights, and good luck on your journey. Let's get you to Series A.
Awesome. Thanks so much to the other fabulous Ashley. Y'all show your love for Ashley Sims, Tina Williams-Kamora, Lenore Champagne-Byrne. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sebastian Niles. He's the President and Chief Legal Officer at Salesforce, followed by Elisa Gums. She's Black Enterprise's VP and Deputy Chief Content Officer with Black Enterprise, to close us out. Thank you all and hope to see you at the Power Meet and Greet.
Look, I'll try to be brief here. I'm just been so impressed and honored and privileged, for myself and for Salesforce, to be able to partner with all of you, to hear, these inspirational, but also very practical and impactful tales of Black women's power, right, of impact, of success, in the tech industry. I wish my 3 daughters, could have sat here and just listened and been inspired, by all of the discussions, today. I have a few thank yous, of course, that I want to provide. Our Salesforce speakers, I think a number of them are still here today. Kimberly Bradbury, April Walker, Catherine Charleston. Thank you. We're so appreciative of you for taking the time to share your insights, your wisdom. I look forward to spending more time with each of you and benefiting myself from your perspectives, and vision for how we'll take Salesforce forward. The New York real estate team, our Office of Equality, our events team, the planning team at Black Enterprise. Thank you for making this all a success. And all the participants, guest sponsor organizations who joined us today, Black Enterprise, of course, Walmart, Merck, and Fidelity, thank you. I think one more sort of scripted comment, is that as we part ways today, I encourage you to carry forward the conversations, connections, and insights you've gained here. Let's continue to uplift each other, advocate for equality and equity, champion belonging, diversity, impact in the tech industry. Together we can build a brighter, more inclusive future for everyone. So that was the scripted comments. But what I want to kind of also say is the following sort of 3 things. Look, 1, each of you are building organizations, ecosystems, enterprises, companies that I believe are built to last. Okay, that's going to also involve, though, your values. At Salesforce, our values are trust, customer success, innovation, equality, and sustainability. For your organizations, I encourage you, define your values. Let your values power your own customer journeys, power how each and every one of you and your employees and your workforce, how you help uplift and drive them forward, to success. At Salesforce, we were built on something we call the V2 MOM, which is vision, values, methods, obstacles, and measures. If that's useful to you, take it, build with it. If it's not, right, you'll use your own. And just the last comment I want to make is that, look, your success, is of course our success too. Your success is America's success. It's the world's success. But you know what? Your success is also your success. It's your family's success. Own it, build it, be proud of it, continue to hopefully uplift each other. And again, we're just so delighted and honored to be able to be with you, on this incredible journey. So thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian, and thank you again to Salesforce for hosting us today in this beautiful space. Thank you to all of our sponsors, Fidelity, Merck, Salesforce, and Walmart, for the investment they've made in the advancement of Black women in tech, and to all of our speakers for candidly sharing their journeys, their lessons, and their success strategies. But most importantly, thanks to all of you for being here today. The team and I have worked tirelessly to create this opportunity for us to grow together, but none of it works without you. We hope you'll share what you learned today on social media using the hashtag WPTech. Speaking of our team, I have the privilege of working with some of the best in the business. So kudos and a huge thanks to all of the BE staff who made today possible.